Welcome to America's Heroes Group.
Yes, Cliff, you were right. We got that America's Heroes Group Roundtable going. And we have our partner, Veteran Healthcare Policy Institute, VHPI, with us today. Today is Saturday, June 19th, 2021. And in case you don't have your ears open, you haven't had your eyes open, you haven't looked at the media, we are actually the first Happy Juneteenth Day, and thank you, President Biden, for recognizing this as an honorable day for those people who have given so much for this country by awarding a day of honor and a celebration and a national holiday. Today also is LGBTQIA Pride Month, and we have to thank all of our veterans and service members who have actually served this country honorably, and they have been doing a wonderful job, so we have got to recognize them for their accomplishments. Our host is, I'm his co-host for Cliff Kelly, Colonel Dr. Damon Arnold. Our executive producer is Glenda Smith, and we have a digital media producer. This is his first time on the show, but he is already making me feel like I better step up my game. But this is Ivan Ortega, and he is from Scouts Honor Productions. And he actually has cameras and all kinds of things I have never seen in my life, so I feel like I'm going into a Starship production now. And we also have two esteemed panelists, Suzanne Gordon, a VHPI Senior Policy Analyst, and her work expands over decades, reporting on healthcare programs, workers, policy, and has authored at least 21 books, authored and edited these books. So Suzanne has written two books, The Battle for Veterans Healthcare and Wounds of War. I advise you to read these to make sure you make them part of your lexicon, your library, your vocabulary. And she has with her Jasper Craven, who's a VHPI Interim Executive Director. And today we'll be talking about the definition of privatization. This has been distorted in the fight over VA policy. Hello, Suzanne and Jasper.
Hey, how are you?
Good.
Hey, how are you?
Good.
Hello.
Hi. So who wants to lead us off in this conversation about the privatization definition? It's very careful we have to be very careful about how we define words, right?
Absolutely. So I'll start maybe, and Jasper will chime in. I don't know how many years ago it was, but a number of years ago, the Washington Post fact checker did a sort of article about the use of the term privatization, where people were saying that efforts to outsource and patient care and send more and more veterans to the private sector was privatization. And this woman said, no, it wasn't, because privatization means that you literally close down the public service and basically, close the facilities and farm them out or shift them out to a private sector company. So, for example, people are very familiar with this in public services, where a city will close down its garbage collection department and send it out to a private company, and then the garbage trucks won't belong to the city anymore, the employees won't work for the city anymore, and so forth. And she said that what's happening in the VA, where they're sending some vets, but not all, to the private sector, giving some money, but not all to the private sector, and keeping VA facilities open with fewer patients, isn't privatization. And nothing could be further from the truth. Privatization and this is why we harp on this at VHPI, because, senators like John Tester of Montana and Mark Takano of California will sponsor and vote for, and Democrats as well, bills that send more and more patients to private providers and shift more and more tax dollars to the private sector, and they say they aren't privatizing. And that's just not true, because privatization is a spectrum of activities, everything from literally, closing down the VA, selling off the equipment, firing all the staff, to and then, selling, the Jesse Hines property to a private hospital or real estate developer. That's one end of a spectrum. But the other end is sending more and more patients out, which they're doing in the Veterans Health Administration, giving claims processing in the VBA, the Veterans Benefits Association, to private sector companies. That's privatization. And charter schools are a perfect example of this. I mean, you don't shut down the public education system. You starve the system of resources and you rig the choice. You say you want people to have a choice, but you make the public sector choice so unappealing that people clamor for the private sector choice. And pretty soon, the public schools may be there, but they're not there, in the way they were when I was a girl and everybody went to public school except humongously rich people who went to private school, the aristocrats.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's almost like a slippery slope, right? The way you're describing it, even though the definition can be viewed in a couple of different ways, the overall effect is that you're actually slanting it towards one particular potential model of, full privatization at some point.
And, and go ahead, Jasper.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. No, absolutely. And, there has been a flurry of policy making over the last 6 years, really, since this Phoenix, VA scandal, which in itself was sort of misdefined. But policy making has been based on a faulty definition of what privatization is. And if you're not able to correctly identify the terms you're using when you're making these massive choices, then the policy itself will be quite flawed. And there's no real acknowledgement of, even when the term is used correctly, of what the effects of privatization are. The way it's defined is also generally seen as a positive one. But, all one needs to do is read reports by the VA's Inspector General, and you'll see that, contractors inside VA and many other federal agencies are routinely overcharging for the services they provide, sometimes criminally overcharging for those services. They're often less accountable. They're unwilling to share key medical information with the VA. And so, I think broadly speaking, we need to both understand what privatization is and also reckon with the impacts of it.
Yes. And then also, one of the other issues that really is of importance, and that I was just thinking about that as you were talking, Jasper, is that not all healthcare systems are created equal. So even if you have privatization, you may have a very, very safety net hospital versus a major academic institution versus, another hospital that's in a suburban area. So the quality of the services may be varying, whereas in the VA, at least you have a standardization across the system.
Right, and there's nothing, Congress can't hold private sector institutions usually accountable. It can't hold their feet to the fire. So, one reason we know about problems in the VA is because it's accountable, it's transparent. And, one of the arguments against government is it's bureaucratic, it's impersonal, it's opaque. It lacks transparency and accountability. And the VA is remarkably accountable. I don't. If I have a problem with my private sector provider, which I do on a routine basis, I can't call my congressman,
Right.
and ask for a congressional inquiry into the fact that,
Right.
Sutter Healthcare, you just screwed me around unbelievably, pardon my French. Mm-hmm. But if the VA, it may take a long time. You may not get exactly what you want. You may think it's a pain in the neck. But if you can call, your veteran can call their congressman and say,
Yes.
A clerk was rude to me. Damon, imagine that you go to a healthcare provider and somebody isn't nice to you. I mean, and if I called my congressman and said, my one medical, the clerk had a bad day and wasn't nice to me, I mean, it would be a joke. But,
yes, it would.
Veterans routinely complain
yes.
that they didn't get the respect they feel they're due, and people take that seriously.
Oh, I had that experience myself personally. Going to the VA, I'm always greeted with a lot of warmth, a lot of compassion from the people who are working with. I'm going to see, and the nurses as well. And I've gone to the private sector where they go like, "Oh, you're a veteran? Sit over in the corner." Yeah,
they don't even ask you if you're a veteran. They don't need to ask you if you're a veteran at the VA because that's the only people I care for. I mean, I'm 75 years old. I have never been asked by any healthcare provider ever if I was served in the military. How do they know I didn't serve in the military?
Yes.
I could have been a nurse in Vietnam. I could have been a nurse at Walter Reed. I mean, and that's pretty well documented. They don't know you're a veteran. But I think that the issue of privatization, between 2017, okay, so if this isn't privatization, then what is privatization? Between 2017 and FY 2021, the budget for the VA on private sector care increased by 223%. Get that?
Wow.
223%. The budget for in-house care increased by 12%.
Ah.
Now, that's called privatization,
yeah.
Even though, in 1 year in FY 2021, the budget for private sector care was $18 billion, which is as much as they spent on the Choice Act between 2014 and 2017. Imagine how many staff, how much infrastructure repair. I mean, if you're spending $20 billion a year sending money out, to largely for-profit health industry, I mean, in 4 years, that's like $80 billion. You could repair the entire VA.
Yeah.
In 4 years.
And
Go ahead.
I would just like to add to that another sort of problematic definition with privatization or assumption is that it saves money, but that's not the case, as Suzanne has just pointed out. I mean, right now we're having this debate in Congress about how the VA's footprint needs to be smaller so that taxpayer dollars are saved, and we can't keep pumping all this money into the VA. But as these budgets are getting bigger, it's largely because of private sector care. Privatization does not save any money.
That makes all the sense in the world to me. But go ahead, Suzanne.
No, I was going to say I listened to a hearing where Congressman Boss, the Republican from, oh my God, where is he from? Jasper, do you know where he's from? Georgia? I don't know where
the
he's
Midwest.
From.
I don't know, yeah.
Or Midwest, no. I don't know. Anyway, he's a Republican, and he was saying, we can't, we have to, shepherd the taxpayer dollar. We can't just throw money at veterans. We can't throw money at these problems. And it's like, yeah, according to him, you can't throw money at it unless the money is thrown at the private sector. If it's spent in the private sector, it's not throwing. It's judiciously using taxpayer dollars. If it's spent in the public sector, it's throwing money. And I think as Jasper said, it's such a boondoggle,
Yes.
I mean, they're allowed to do as much as they want to veterans with no quality control, no control over whether they have expertise in veterans' problems. It's just a plain old boondoggle. I mean, it's just a transfer of money to these elite systems that are only interested in expensive, doing expensive procedures on veterans. They're not interested in, homeless veterans or veterans who have complex chronic conditions that need to be managed. But I just think that, the thing is that veterans don't like the P word. They don't want the VA to be privatized.
Yes.
So what they've done is this magic trick where they privatize and then they say, oh, no, we're not privatizing because privatization means getting rid of the entire VA. And what we're doing is, is just giving people a choice. But the reality is that if you're spending 200% more on private sector care and 12% more on in-house care, you're eroding the choice, and then people don't have a choice anymore.
Yeah, and one of the things that I've been seeing going on in the private sector also is that there is a marked move towards trying to cut cost and trying to minimize the importance of some healthcare procedures that people actually need because of the cost containment and trying to stop this rapid rise. As you were saying, the $18 billion is this, astronomical 223% increase. And so there is a need to be cognizant that privatization can ultimately lead to the erosion of your benefits as a veteran as well, because in the private sector they may handle things a lot differently than you would have handled in a VA under a system that was constructed to take care of your problem.
Oh, absolutely. And I just think, one could go on this, and but I just think that the American healthcare system is being, it's always been based on profit, but it's being so, corporatized that it's like a joke. And I have great health care, and a friend of mine tried to find a urologist in the private sector recently, and it was a 4 to 5 month wait because this person is an older gentleman who just has sort of a routine, enlarged prostate, and urologists are not interested in that kind of patient. They want, someone who can get a prostatectomy or, David, the jargon and the operations more than I do. They want high-end, procedures, and so you get a sort of lower score if you come to them with just a sort of chronic management problem.
Right.
And, this is just, it's unreal. And it doesn't matter whether you're well-insured or poorly insured. It's like if you aren't a profit center for them, they're really not interested in you. And veterans, in the VA, if this gentleman had been a VA patient, he would have gotten in a week because it's not fee for service. They were paid on salary. They get paid whether you have a cold or whether you're, dying of some fancy disease.
Right.
It's irrelevant.
Yes. Yeah, because, one of the things, I was trained in internal medicine and had a second residency I did in occupational and environmental medicine. And with the occupational medicine, there was really a strong focus placed upon what was your workplace, where do you work, and what kinds of exposures do you have, and what do you have things where you have repetitive motions at a computer, or are you working in a foundry or in a factory or in a steel mill, or inside of a oil, so these things are really important to get an idea of what your overall health is. And I always, talk to general physicians who are practicing and say, you need to take an occupational history. And so when people go,
exactly.
And this is, really pertinent to the military in that you have people who are tankers, you have people who are in aircraft, in helicopters, you have people doing all sorts of jobs all the way across the service branches, right? And for someone who is in the office, they have no conception of what this person was going, don't even speak the language,
Oh, yeah. And you can, I remember years ago I was working on doing observations on a cancer ward, and a patient came in who had, can't remember what kind of cancer, and she had problems of pain in her wrist. And, of course, the oncologist, who was taught to think of zebras, was thinking, oh, my God, she's got metastases in her bones or something like that. And I noticed that she worked for AT&T, and I asked her what she did, and she was some kind of clerk. And I said to the oncologist, you might want to ask her about what job she does. And it turned out it was a repetitive strain injury.
Oh, boy. Yes, right, exactly.
And she would have worked her up for, scans and
or do a
schmans
surgery or carpal tunnel. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, whatever. It was just. Oh no, she wouldn't have even thought of that. It was all
right. Right.
She's. But I think in the VA, they have a much broader public health. So, what
we're running out of time, though.
What,
we have about less than a minute to go. But I wanted you to give the the way that people can reach you and find out more information very quickly.
So it's veterans, if you go www.veteranspolicy.org, and I just want to say real quick, if you go talk to your congressional representative, I would avoid the word privatization. I would say we want you to stop outsourcing care to the private sector and insource care to the VA.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense from what you were saying.
Because then then they can't get away with saying, "Oh, I'm against privatization." Don't worry, I'm on your side.
And we have got to get you back for a longer time segment because this is such an important issue. It's really critical to our veterans, especially those who've had injuries and who are getting VA care because of combat-related injuries. And it's a camaraderie there also between veterans. We know how to speak to each other, and that will be lost as well if you go into a private sector world where you never see another veteran. So thank you to our partner, Veteran Healthcare Policy Institute. Suzanne and Jasper, as always, you're fantastic. Thank you for what you do for our service members, and happy Father's Day out there. And we will be right back right after these commercial messages.